Three young boys, triplets, from a quiet suburb in Oregon, went to school one morning and never came home. Their disappearance shattered the lives of their parents, leaving behind years of unanswered questions and a silence too heavy to bear. But 5 years later, their mother zooms in on Google Maps and sees something that stops her heart. Before we begin, thank you for watching. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is over there. It really means a lot to know that you're with us. We're going through this together. Now let me tell you what really happened. The sunset cast a soft glow over the thin fabric curtain in the old Airbnb on the southern outskirts of Colorado. The silence was so profound that the sound of keystrokes echoed like a heartbeat in a chest. Mira Collins sat motionless on the faded sofa, laptop resting on her lap. Her eyes burned from hours without blinking, yet she stayed locked on the screen. Tonight wasn't the first night she stayed up, but this time was different. 5 years had passed since that fateful day, the day Leo, Max, and Ryder vanished without a trace after school at Crescent Elm Elementary. No one saw them leave the classroom. No one remembered who picked them up. The cameras malfunctioned. No solid evidence, no suspects, no explanation. Mira used to be a cheerful woman, quick to laugh, fond of wildflowers and baking apple pies every weekend. Now she was a shadow of her former self. Quiet, gaunt, pale-faced, always carrying paperwork in her bag and a faith that had been drained, then reignited. Michael, her husband, took on the heavy tasks, dealing with police, lawyers, the press. He was calmer, more pragmatic, but both were slowly losing their patience, and at times, each other. Countless aimless trips across the country chasing vague leads had brought them to the edge. Some nights they exchanged only a few words, some days none at all. But one thing had never changed. They were still looking for their children. Tonight, Mira wasn't looking for anything specific. She just opened Google Maps out of habit. She typed in the names that had appeared in investigative reports: towns, farms, churches, nursing homes, bus stations, roadside motels, places no one would think of. She zoomed in on a small town called Enderfield, a name she once saw mentioned in an old news piece while researching isolated communities. The town had nothing remarkable: no large signs, no shopping centers, no chain restaurants, just dirt roads, old painted wooden houses, and a few red-brown abandoned lots. Mira switched to Street View. At first it was just random images: a tractor repair shop, a few broken lamp posts, a tiny police station tucked behind a warehouse. Then she moved the cursor along a dusty stretch of suburban road, one not even named on the map, and that's when she saw them. 3 children, walking with a woman, their backs turned to the camera, faces not visible, but Mira froze. A wave of dizziness swept over her. Her hands trembled. The red-striped jacket Max used to wear, the blue beanie Ryder loved, and Leo's waddling gait, his left knee always dipped as if carrying a heavy backpack. She reached out to touch the screen, her eyes blurred. "You're still up?" Michael's voice came from behind, soft, but unable to hide the weariness. Mira didn't turn around. "Come here." Michael walked over, still in a wrinkled t-shirt and sweatpants. He bent down to look. "What is it?" She pointed. "There, look closely." He squinted, staring at the 3 kids on the screen. "Street View?" "Yes, image updated 10 months ago. Here, Enderfield." Michael looked more carefully, silent for a few seconds. "I see them, but are you sure?" "That jacket was Max's. I remember stitching the right shoulder myself. And Ryder's hat. I used to hide spare change in it every time he went to school." Michael sighed, eyes still fixed on the screen. Their backs are turned. Could be a coincidence. You know, it's not the first time we've seen something like this. "Not like before," Mira said softly, almost whispering to herself, "This time I know." Michael didn't answer. He quietly sat down beside her, placing a hand on her back. Mira pulled up the toolbar, trying to rotate the camera angle. She knew the faces would be blurred, but still she hoped. In a few frames, the woman walking with the 3 children, wearing a long dress, head wrapped in a scarf, was also faceless. But her silhouette made Mira's breath catch. "The house behind them," Mira murmured. "Must be where they live." Michael picked up his phone, opened the map. "Enderfield, about 2,000 kilometers from here, New Mexico. We could get there in 2 days if we drive straight." Mira nodded almost immediately. "We have to go." Michael looked at her and saw a light in her eyes for the first time in months, a glimmer he thought was gone. He nodded gently. "Then we leave tomorrow. I'll get the car ready." Mira saved the image, marked the coordinates. She printed the map and the Google View photo. Though blurry and unclear, it was the biggest piece of evidence in the past 5 years to her. Outside the window, darkness settled in. The wind tapped gently against the wooden wall, cold but crisp. Mira closed the laptop, but her mind spun, not from excitement, but from fear. Afraid that this was just an illusion, afraid that once they arrived the trail would go cold again, afraid that this hope, like every other, would dissolve. But whatever it was, tomorrow morning they would set out. And this time Mira would not leave that town without knowing whether they were alive or not. As they got into the car, Mira still couldn't shake the image of the 3 children on Google Maps from her mind. A mother always knows, she thought. Even when the world denies it, a mother still knows. Mira sat behind the wheel, started the engine, then glanced at the GPS screen. The route to Enderfield was laid out in a winding green line stretching nearly 2,000 kilometers. She fastened her seatbelt, her heart heavy, but with a rare flicker of light inside. Michael sat beside her, holding a thick stack of documents. Copies of missing person files, witness statements, a list of towns they had passed through. He flipped through the pages quickly, occasionally jotting notes in the margins. They had taken similar journeys dozens of times, but this time was different, not based on rumors, but on an image, evidence they had seen with their own eyes. "Stay straight on the highway, turn right in 30 miles, the automated female voice from the phone announced. Mira gave a slight nod, eyes still on the road. They passed barren fields, abandoned gas stations, and sparse road signs, signs that they were moving away from cell coverage and barista-made coffee. Enderfield, Michael repeated the name as if testing out an old curse. Not in the original investigation data. No one's ever mentioned it. "I know," Mira replied, "because it's outside of everything. No hospital, no social media, no news. It's not a place to get lost. It's a place to disappear." Michael looked at his wife but said nothing. He had once doubted her instincts, had argued, had insisted on turning back. But after 5 years, he understood that no one had more accurate instincts than Mira when it came to their 3 children. The afternoon light faded as they crossed the state line. The sky burned red, sunlight slanting through the windshield made Mira squint. As they neared Enderfield, the GPS began to glitch. Weak signal, the road narrowed and turned to dirt. No street lights, no signs, only red dust and sparse woods on either side. "Are we still going the right way?" Michael asked, looking at the backup paper map. Mira didn't respond immediately. She was guided by instinct, like walking through a dream she had had hundreds of times. At last they saw an old wooden sign by the roadside. "Welcome to Enderfield, Community of Light." The sign was crooked. The white painted letters faded with time, beneath it a symbol of a radiant sun. Michael read the words and frowned. "Community of Light? Sounds like the name of a cult." "Maybe it is," Mira said softly. "They call themselves the Brethren of Light." She had seen that phrase on a corner wall in the Street View image, a small clue few would have noticed. Enderfield appeared ahead, a sparse collection of old wooden houses, rusted tin roofs, and a few metal sheds. No grocery stores, no cars, no children playing. Just a few adults in dark robes walking slowly along the main road. Mira drove very slowly, observing each house, each window. "You want to go straight into the town?" Michael asked. "We don't know who runs this place. We shouldn't show up looking like strangers causing trouble." Mira hesitated. "I know, but I want to see. I need to see it with my own eyes." As they passed a small white chapel, Mira instinctively stopped the car. "This place," she whispered. "It looks like the house in the photo." She parked at a safe distance, pulled out her phone, and compared it with the screenshot. The slant of the roof, the low wooden fence, the wild bushes around the steps. It all matched. She turned to Michael. "Look, that's it." Michael looked and nodded slowly. "It really is, but in the photo there were 3 kids and a woman. Now no one's there." "Maybe they're not outside, or maybe they're inside." Mira placed her hand on the car door handle. "I'm going in to ask." Michael grabbed her hand. "Wait, don't rush. If this is a cult, they might not be friendly. It's dangerous to go in alone." "Then I won't be myself," Mira said, eyes fixed on the chapel. "I'll be a pilgrim, a seeker of light." Michael couldn't hide his surprise. "You're serious?" "I read about how they accept outsiders," Mira explained. "They don't open the door to police, but if someone is seeking light, they'll welcome them, even if only temporarily." Michael was silent for a long while. He knew she had prepared for this. "What about me?" he asked. "You stay out, gather information, approach the locals. If anything happens inside, I need you to be out here." Mira grabbed her handbag, where she had packed a small notebook, some cash, and a hastily made fake ID. Michael sighed. "We used to be a teacher and an office worker. Now we're like secret agents." "You think 5 years of searching for our children wouldn't turn us into different people?" Mira replied gently, yet painfully. "All I have left is instinct." Michael nodded, kissed her forehead. "If you're not out in an hour, I'm coming in, no matter what." Mira gave a faint smile. "It won't take an hour. I just need a glimpse, a birthmark, a name." She opened the door and stepped out, her palms cold and sweaty. The village was eerily silent, but Mira's heart pounded as if she were stepping into the epicenter of her pain. She didn't yet know what she would say, didn't know who she would meet, but that didn't matter anymore. Because if there was even a 1% chance that Leo, Max, and Ryder were here, she would do everything to uncover the truth. Inside the community hall, the coolness was unexpectedly refreshing. There was no air conditioning, but the thick walls and high wooden ceiling made the air feel pleasant, as if stepping into a place completely removed from the outside world. The scent of mint and beeswax candles mingled in the space, giving a sense of cleanliness, but also emptiness. Mira walked slowly down the stone-tiled hallway, the soles of her feet sensing the coolness through her shoes. She reminded herself to breathe calmly, to act like a true pilgrim. "Hello, sister." A gentle female voice came from the right. Mira turned her head. A middle-aged woman dressed in a coarse beige robe, holding a wicker basket of bread, was smiling. "I'm Sister Aaliyah. You're new here?" "Yes," Mira replied, trying to keep the tremor out of her voice. "I heard this was a peaceful place. I've been looking for somewhere like that." "The Brethren of Light always welcome those who seek the light," Aaliyah said, her smile unchanged. "Father Ezra is at the main chapel. We're about to begin our afternoon sharing. Would you like to join?" "I'd love to," Mira nodded. Aaliyah led her through a small garden where neat rows of green vegetables were growing, down a narrow dirt path, and to a 2-story wooden building with a pointed roof. Along the way, Mira noticed everyone dressed similarly, long robes in beige or gray, Simple shoes, neatly tied-up hair. No one wore watches, no one carried phones, and not a single person appeared busy or rushed, as if time here flowed more slowly. When they reached the chapel, Mira stepped inside and immediately felt the atmosphere of a ritual. Everyone sat quietly on wooden benches. There was no music, no whispering. Light streamed through tall window panes, forming long beams that fell to the floor. At the front, a tall man with neatly parted silver hair stood in silence, his hands resting on a Bible. "Welcome, newcomer," he said without turning around, as if he sensed Mira's presence. "I am Ezra." He turned, eyes bright, voice deep and compelling. "This is a place of stillness, a place to let go of the old world and begin anew." Mira gave a slight nod and stepped forward to sit on the back bench. As Ezra continued, speaking of healing, of uprooting pain, of the light within every person, Mira observed those around her. They did not react like a normal congregation. No smiles, no nods, no headshakes. Only silence, stillness, as if they'd been trained. An hour later, the sharing ended. There was no applause, no commotion. Everyone stood almost simultaneously, filing out like a gentle tide. Mira walked slowly, trying to see if there were any children among the crowd, but there were none. No laughter, no running footsteps, only adults. She was about to step out when Aaliyah approached again. "Will you be staying?" "I hope to," Mira said cautiously. "We'll arrange a bed for you in the women's quarters. Here, you don't need to worry about anything. We have scheduled times for communal work, meditation, prayer, and meals. Everyone lives by the same rules." Rules like no phones, no watches, no using surnames. Everyone here is brother or sister. We dress alike to erase distinction. Children do not interact with outsiders during their first 2 weeks to stabilize their minds. We call that the quiet period. Mira memorized every word. No phones, no surnames, children isolated, all warning signs, but she couldn't show it. "I understand," she said. "I also want stillness." Aaliyah smiled. "You'll soon feel right at home." As night fell, Mira was led to a small room with a wooden bed, an oil lamp, and a thin blanket. She set down her backpack, sat down breathing heavily, unable to believe she had made it inside the community. Outside the window she could hear soft singing, wordless, tuneless, like a lullaby for adults. Meanwhile, a few kilometers away, Michael was filling the gas tank at an old roadside station, chatting with a middle-aged female vendor. "You're asking about the woman who brought 3 kids to the clinic?" she repeated, squinting. "That was about a year ago. I remember someone like that. 3 little brown-haired kids called her Mother Ruth." Michael's heart pounded. "Do you remember anything else?" "They wore strange clothes, not like folks from around here, like those church people in the woods. I also heard rumors that Ruth worked with some orphan group or something, but no one dared ask too much." Michael wrote everything down. The name Mother Ruth became the first clear lead. He knew Mira needed to hear this, but in that community there were no phones, no way to reach her. Night deepened, and Mira lay on the bed, wide awake. She hadn't seen Leo, Max, or Ryder, but from the eyes of a young girl who served dinner, empty and expressionless, Mira could sense one thing. This place was not just about faith. It was about control, and her children were very close. Evening in Enderfield was strange in its own unique way. There were no bright electric lights, no noisy sounds of traffic or background music from loudspeakers. But every Friday night, the Brethren of Light community held a small market in the dirt courtyard, not for trade, but for brotherly fellowship, according to Sister Aaliyah. Mira was allowed to attend along with the other sisters. Each person brought a few handmade items: dark rye bread, dried tea, knitted goods, or fruit preserves. She didn't bring anything, but was permitted to stand by one of the stalls to observe and learn. Light from the scattered oil lamps created a dim, almost surreal space. Adults spoke in soft tones. Children, very few, were allowed to appear, but only when accompanied by a guardian and never out of sight. Mira watched each child carefully. Every one of them made her heart tighten, then loosen again because it wasn't, until she saw that boy. He stood about 10 meters away holding a pastry, his other hand clutching the hem of a woman's dress. He wore a gray wool sweater, had dark brown hair, and his build was slightly small for his age. But what made Mira feel breathless wasn't his face. It was a small birthmark on the back of his neck, right at the hairline. That birthmark, unmistakable. She had kissed it every night, had teased Ryder that it looked like an angel's fingerprint. Mira didn't remember how she had stepped forward. Her heart felt like it might burst from her chest. But as she got closer, the boy suddenly turned around, his eyes passing over her for a brief moment. There was no recognition, nothing in that gaze. He turned away, gripped the woman's hand tighter, and called out, "Mother Ruth!" Mira froze. The woman wore a long brown dress, her hair neatly braided, so ordinary in appearance that no one paid her any mind. But the name just spoken stopped Mira cold. Ruth. The very name Michael had heard at the gas station. The woman who had brought the 3 children to the clinic a year ago. It couldn't be a coincidence. Mira followed them from a distance. Ruth wasn't alone. She was with a tall man in a cloak, someone who looked like a supervisor. 3 children walked silently behind them, each keeping a measured distance. No one spoke. No one looked around. Ryder, if it was truly him, suddenly paused for a moment and turned back toward Mira. 1 second. 2 seconds. Eyes met. But then Ruth called softly, and he turned away. Mira stepped back, heart pounding in her chest. She didn't know if she was crying. Her eyes stung, her hands trembled. She retreated into the shadows, leaned against a nearby tree, trying to breathe normally. For the first time in 5 years, she had seen her child, but he hadn't recognized her. Not at all. A gentle hand touched her shoulder, making Mira startle. It was Sister Aliyah. "Are you all right?" Aliyah asked, concern clearly on her face. "Yes, just a little tired," Mira replied. "I need some air." "The market will end in 10 minutes, Aliyah said. "If you want to head back early, I'll ask someone to take you." Mira nodded slightly. "Thank you. I'll be back." She didn't go back. Instead, she took the opposite path, slipping through the shadows between bushes, about 100 meters from the market. Her eyes followed the direction Ruth and the children had disappeared. At the edge of the forest on the western side of town, there was a low chain-link fence covered with camouflage netting. Beyond it lay a small dirt path leading into a camp. No sign, no lights. Mira saw Ruth and the tall man with the 3 children pass through the fence, guarded by a man in black clothing. She couldn't follow further, but she had seen enough. That night, when she returned to her room, Mira wrote down everything by hand. Ruth's name, details of the children's clothing, the location of the camp in the woods, the appearance of the guard. She hid the note beneath the wooden bed lining. If anything happened, Michael had to find it. The next morning, Michael quietly returned to the area Mira had described, posing as a wandering photographer, shooting wilderness scenes. He found a spot with low trees suitable for mounting a mini camera, the kind he had brought since the start of the trip, in case they couldn't get close. When he returned to the car, he received a message from an unknown number. "They may know you're here. Be careful." No signature, no identity. Michael immediately deleted the message, a chill creeping down his spine. But he didn't stop. If Mira had seen their son, then they couldn't retreat. Not this time. That same night, they met in the car at a rendezvous point outside town, far from the eyes and ears of the community. Mira recounted everything she saw. Michael showed her where the camera had been installed. They agreed to wait a few days to monitor. No rash moves. As Mira was about to leave the car, Michael held her hand. "Are you sure it was Ryder?" Mira looked at him, eyes shining. "No one else has that birthmark. It was him." They didn't need anything more than that. Mira knew she was playing a silent game of chess, and Ruth was the most dangerous piece. She was known in the community as Sister Grace, in charge of the Light Children Nurturing Program, which sounded like a charitable project, but was in fact a system of isolation, control, and ideological reconditioning from an early age. Grace often appeared at the dining area each morning, always accompanied by 3 boys. They were called Eden, Caleb, and Ruthie. They were not triplets, at least that's what the people around them believed. They dressed simply, so similarly it seemed intentional. Their hair was neatly cut, their eyes quiet. They never smiled, never spoke to strangers. The way they moved, the way they kept their distance from adults, every part of it had been trained. But Mira knew. A mother knows. The tallest boy, Eden, had a faint birthmark on the back of his neck, where Ryder used to have a mark shaped like a droplet. Caleb, the one in the middle, had Max's characteristic frown, the way he used to grit his teeth when tense. And Ruthie, despite the feminine name almost a mockery, had the eyes Mira could never forget, Leo's eyes, the boy who used to hide candy under his pillow and wink at his mom. They had grown, now 12 years old. Taller, deeper voices, their facial features had changed, but the way they walked, their gaze, the little habits, those couldn't have vanished in 5 years, no matter how hard this cult tried. Mira wasn't in a rush. She watched Ruth during communal work sessions. The woman spoke as though reciting carefully edited lines, her voice flat, expressionless, never saying a word too many. She always appeared polite, cautious, and above all, in control. Every morning, Grace escorted the 3 children to scripture school, then brought them back in the afternoon to a secluded camp deep in the forest, a place off limits to newcomers like Mira. No one in the community questioned it. To them, Ruth was an essential pillar of the system, the guardian of the new generation of light. One morning, Mira volunteered to help prepare food in the nutrition ward, Ruth's assigned area. They stood side by side at a long table, slicing vegetables and washing roots. The 3 boys were a few meters away, setting the tableware. Mira's heart pounded as she heard their voices, brief, robotic, as if rehearsed. "That boy, he's very well behaved," Mira began, eyes still on the pile of onions on the cutting board. "Yes," Ruth replied. "Eden is gentle and has a calm mind." "He looks familiar. I have 3 sons," Mira said slowly. "They disappeared 5 years ago." Ruth paused for a moment, but when she turned to Mira, her face didn't change. "I'm very sorry." "Twins were already hard," Mira continued. 3 was almost impossible, but they managed. They shared everything, even their fears. Grace set the knife down. "Here, we teach the children that they don't have to be afraid anymore, that they don't have to remember." Mira looked up at her. "Not remember? Children who came from violent environments don't need to carry those memories with them forever." "You think remembering their parents is violence?" Mira asked, her voice dropping. Grace looked at her. Something flickered in her eyes, wariness or pity. Mira couldn't tell. "Who are you?" Grace asked softly. "Just a mother who never stopped looking for her children," Mira answered. They stood in silence for a moment, with only the sound of running water and knives chopping vegetables filling the air. Then Ruth turned away and called to the 3 boys. Time to divide. From that day on, the children vanished from all common areas, no longer seen during meals, classes, or communal labor. Mira knew Grace had figured her out. That night, when she returned to her room, Mira found her bed had been searched. Her bag was open, a note had been taken. No confrontation, no accusation, but the message was clear. They knew who she was, and they were watching. She didn't panic. Instead, she found Michael that very night, at the secret meeting point 3 kilometers outside the town. Under the dim red beam of a flashlight, Michael showed her the latest footage from the mini camera installed in the forest. Mira held her breath. The 3 children sat in a row, reciting aloud before an adult. "Your parents died in the fire. We do not speak of the old world. Father Ezra saved your souls." Mira doubled over, tears falling uncontrollably. 5 years. They had lost 5 years. And in those years, someone had tried to break her children's memories, to erase their parents from their minds. Michael knelt beside her, allowing himself to collapse for the first time. They both cried like people who had unearthed a body, but could not reach out to touch it. "They're alive," Mira whispered, "but they're no longer themselves." "I know," Michael said, "but I also know they're still in there. Ryder, Max, Leo. Their eyes can't lie." "We're bringing them home," Michael said, his voice choked, "even if we have to face this entire church." Mira and Michael couldn't wait any longer. With the video as evidence, along with the detailed observations Mira had gathered during her time inside the community, they decided to report it. Early the next morning, they left the Airbnb and drove to the local police station in the nearest town, a small brick building next to a repair shop and an old-fashioned pharmacy. The police office had only one reception desk, a few community safety posters, and a middle-aged officer sitting behind a desk. The man wore a baseball cap and held a steaming cup of coffee. "How can I help you two?" he asked without looking up. "We'd like to report a case of child abduction," Michael said, handing over the prepared file. Mira placed a printed photo of the 3 children and a transcript of the video extracted from the hidden camera. The man finally looked up. The small nameplate on his chest read, "Sheriff Mickey Holt." He frowned, flipped through a few pages, then paused at a frame from Google Street View, where the 3 children appeared with the woman named Ruth. "This happened 5 years ago?" Holt asked, glancing at Mira. "Yes," she replied firmly. "The 3 children went missing from an elementary school in another state. We believe they're currently being illegally held by a group called the Brethren of Light in Inderfield. We have proof." "And," Holt raised an eyebrow, "they live in this town?" "Nearby," Michael said. "They have a secluded camp in the woods, hidden, unmarked. The children have been renamed, brainwashed, and separated from their biological parents." Holt leaned back in his chair, stroking his chin. "That's a serious claim, but the Brethren of Light is a group that's done a lot for this area. They've repaired roads, helped during fire season, opened free classes. They even have an in-house doctor who treats people for free. I don't see a reason to be suspicious." Mira clenched her fists. "You don't see any reason besides 3 missing children and a video showing them being conditioned to believe their parents are dead?" "The woman you're referring to, Ruth? She's a registered orphan caretaker in that community," Holt said evenly. "With paperwork, state support. We've conducted multiple checks. No violations found." Michael stepped forward half a step. "We have footage of those children being forced to believe lies. They're not orphans. We're their biological parents." Holt narrowed his eyes. "Do you have birth certificates, DNA tests, or legal proof that those 3 kids are yours?" "After 5 years of name changes and brainwashing, it's hard for them to identify themselves," Mira said. "But we know our children, the birthmarks, their habits, everything." "Sorry," Holt cut in, "but maternal instinct isn't legal evidence." The room fell silent. Mira stared at the sheriff, eyes burning. If you refuse to open an investigation, we'll take this to the FBI. Be my guest, Holt shrugged, then tilted his head suddenly. But from what I understand, you two have been residing unlawfully in a closed religious zone, gathering footage without permission. If someone files a complaint, you could be prosecuted for trespassing, illegal surveillance, and disturbing public order. Michael closed his eyes, restraining himself. Are you threatening us? I'm warning you, Holt said, so you don't get yourselves into deeper trouble. Not long after, Mira and Michael left the police station, their heads spinning. They sat quietly in the car for a few minutes before Michael started the engine. He's not just refusing to help, he's alerting the other side, Mira said, eyes fixed on the window. Did you see how he blocked every possible route? I saw, Michael nodded. And if you're right, Ezra already knows we have the footage. That afternoon, they returned to the edge of the forest where Michael had hidden the camera. But when they checked it, the lens had been covered with a piece of black cloth. The audio system was still functioning, and they heard the sound of a car engine, footsteps, and finally a child's voice carried on the wind. Mother Grace, I forgot my book. Then silence, no reply, no more trace of the children. That night, the forest camp where Mira had once seen Ruth and the three boys was completely dark. No more oil lamps, no more guards. The tents had been taken down, the land left bare, as if no one had ever lived there. They had been moved. Mira stood in the darkness, heart breaking. She didn't know what hurt more, losing the children's trail once again, or knowing she herself had triggered their removal. This time it could be forever. Michael placed a hand on her shoulder. We haven't lost. They're running because they know we're getting close. We may not be fast enough, Mira said, voice almost cracking. If they cross state lines or get separated, then we'll find them again, any way we can. This time we have photos, audio, real proof. I don't think the FBI will look the other way now. Mira looked at him, her eyes blurred with tears. Do you think they recognized us? Leo? Max? Ryder? Michael was silent for a moment. I think... There was a moment, Eden. The boy in the middle looked straight at the camera, like he remembered someone was waiting. Mira gasped. Just one moment like that was enough. She took her husband's hand. We won't stop, no matter where they take them. Michael nodded. We've lost 5 years. We won't lose another day. Michael sat motionless behind the wheel, eyes fixed on the laptop screen on the passenger seat. Pale blue light from the video reflected off his gaunt cheeks. Mira sat beside him, hands clenched tightly around her knees. The car was parked in a secluded part of the forest, with weak signal, but just enough to finish downloading the latest clip from the last working camera, removed earlier that morning. Michael replayed it for the 3rd time. Though he had memorized every frame, he still couldn't look away. A small room, wooden walls, an old desk, a loosely hung whiteboard. In front of it, 3 boys sat, each with a notebook. Standing before them was a man in a gray robe, voice steady like he was reciting a ritual. Repeat, the man said. The 3 children responded in unison, almost emotionless. Our biological parents died in a fire. They were the cause of violence. Father Ezra is the only one who saved us from the curse of the old world. Mira's heart felt like it was being crushed. Her son's voice, Leo, no longer held its innocent tone. He spoke slowly, each word crisp, as though memorized over years. Max kept his head down, avoiding the camera. And Ryder, the youngest, glanced briefly toward the corner of the room, where the lens was hidden behind a potted plant. Did you see that? Mira whispered, pointing at the glance. Ryder knows someone's watching. He remembers. Michael didn't respond. His throat tightened. He nodded slightly, as if he could only answer through action. Mira buried her face in her hands, tears streaming down. She had imagined her children being kidnapped, taken far away, but she had never imagined this, that they would be brainwashed, have their memories erased, be turned into entirely different people. "They're learning how to forget us," Mira said softly. Day by day. Michael began to cry. For the first time, truly cried. He turned his face away, but Mira saw his shoulders shaking. For 5 years, he had always been the one at the wheel, the rational one, the planner. But this video had broken him. They sat in silence in the car for nearly an hour. At last, Michael spoke, voice hoarse. "I'm sending this to the FBI. The FBI will need time, a search warrant, legal procedures, identity verification." Mira shook her head. "By then they'll be moved again." "So what do we do?" Mira looked up, her eyes red but gaze firm. "We follow. They can't have gone far. They need time to relocate the kids, cover their tracks. Every passing hour is an opportunity." Michael agreed. He called an old friend who used to work in GPS tracking, asked him to check if any vehicles left the forest last night. At the same time, they analyzed the sounds in the video, engine noise, echoing acoustics, to determine the direction. Mira studied the topographic map, marking every possible route. Within hours, they identified a narrow road leading west, the only one without traffic cameras. A nearby resident confirmed seeing a convoy of gray vehicles leaving the woods near midnight. "They're on the move," Michael said. "Maybe transferring the kids to a new location." "They know they're about to be exposed," Mira replied, "and they're not planning to be found again." By late afternoon, Michael received a response from the FBI. They had received the video. A federal agent would call back within 24 hours. But Mira couldn't wait 24 hours. "We have to go, right now," she said. "We know the direction. We can follow, intercept them." "Intercept?" Michael hesitated. "What do you mean?" "I don't need a warrant. I don't need permission. I just need them to see me, so they remember." Michael hesitated, but then he remembered Ryder's gaze straight into the lens, and he nodded. They packed up the car and left the forest just after dark. Headlights cut through dirt and gravel, dust clouding the windshield. They followed every tire track, every sharp bend. When they reached a quiet road, dense trees on either side, Michael spotted fresh tracks, deep treads, a heavy vehicle. "Here," he said. "Looks like a truck just stopped." They killed the engine, shone a flashlight ahead. In the distance, the dim taillights of a truck faded around a bend. Mira jumped into the car, urging Michael forward. "Stay on it!" The road grew rougher, but Michael kept pace. Mira's heart pounded. She didn't know what they were about to face, but this time they couldn't afford to lose the trail again. When the truck ahead slowed and turned into an open clearing in the forest, Michael pulled over to the side. There was no time to think. "We stop them. Right now," Mira said, then flung open the door, charging into the darkness with the full force of a mother who had survived 5 years of hell. Night had fallen when Mira sent the video to the FBI, both by email and through an encrypted app Michael had set up. Less than 10 minutes later, a federal agent called back to confirm they had received the file. They said it would be escalated to their superiors, a prosecution case would be opened, and a search warrant requested by the next morning. But Mira knew, by morning, it would be too late. The moment the footage was extracted from the hidden camera and sent out, the church must have realized it was being watched. And they reacted faster than any agency could. One of the townspeople secretly warned them, "The children are being moved tonight." Michael called the local police station, hoping for even the smallest support. But as soon as he mentioned the name Father Ezra, the dispatcher's tone changed. They said there wasn't enough evidence to take action, and "This town is used to peace. Please don't stir it up." Mira threw the phone onto the car seat, her lips pressed so tightly they turned white. "Holt warned Ezra." Michael didn't answer. He was checking the equipment: camera, backup batteries, maps, radio. He was familiar with this feeling, the sense of being left behind by those meant to uphold the law. "We'll do it ourselves," Mira said, voice hoarse but resolute. They left the rental cabin, the car racing through the darkness, headlights sweeping across the cold tree trunks of the Enderfield forest. There was no moon tonight, only a sky heavy with dark clouds pressing down on the treetops. Michael drove, eyes fixed on the faint tire marks still lingering on the ground, the only traces of the convoy that had just left the camp. Mira sat beside him, constantly checking the radio, temporary tracker, and images from the previously installed cameras. One of the cameras had just been dismantled a few hours earlier. The last image showed the boys being led away, heads bowed, carrying small bags. Ryder looked back, just for a split second. Mira couldn't stop thinking about that glance. "There's a vehicle ahead," Michael whispered. "About 500 meters." He turned off the headlights. The car crawled in the dark, using only the weak moonlight that flickered through the clouds. Ahead, they saw the faint red glow of taillights, an old truck, its back covered by a black tarp. Behind it was a smaller SUV. Both were moving slowly, cautiously. Michael kept a safe distance, using the forest drive mode his vehicle had been specially modified with for rough terrain. Mira used night vision binoculars, trying to read the license plates, but they were smeared, nearly illegible. "If they get onto the highway, we'll lose them," she said. "They'll disappear again." "There's a narrow road up ahead," Michael replied. "If we block it there, we have a chance." "Block it how?" Mira asked. "No weapons, no backup." "We don't need any. Just time. Just close enough for the kids to recognize us." They turned left, cutting through a forest path, circling ahead, using the topographic map Michael had memorized. The narrow road he mentioned was only about 50 meters long, just enough for one vehicle to block it completely. The terrain was sloped, with shallow cliffs on both sides. Michael pulled over to the side, quickly placed 3 reflective stakes in the middle of the road, then positioned their car across it. "We have 5 to 7 minutes," he said. "We need to prepare everything." Mira took out the flyers they had printed over the past 5 years. Old photos, young eyes, 3 faces alike, yet each uniquely different. She taped them to the windows, held a few in her hands. She knew, if the children had even a shred of memory left, they would recognize themselves in those photos, or see their mother's eyes. An engine growled in the distance. "They're here," Michael said. The convoy's headlights beamed directly at their blockade, now the stopping point. The SUV braked hard. The truck behind it stopped as well. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. No one got out. The forest wind howled. Branches knocked against each other like the breath of someone hiding nearby. "Michael," Mira whispered, "I'm afraid they'll turn back." "They won't," he replied. "It's downhill behind them. No room to turn in time." The SUV's front door opened. A tall man stepped out, wearing a light gray cloak, his face mostly hidden. He walked toward Mira and Michael, stopping about 3 meters away. "Get out of the way," he said, voice low, controlled, but threatening. Michael held up the camera, switched it to recording mode. "You're transporting missing minors. We have evidence. The FBI is on its way." The man glanced at the camera, eyes ice cold. Mira said nothing. She stepped forward, holding up the photo of her 3 sons. Her hands trembled, but her voice did not. "They are my children. Leo, Max, Ryder. We are not leaving until we see them." No one responded. The truck door began to open, slowly, as if the person inside were still hesitant. A beam of light from the rear vehicle passed through the opening, illuminating small legs, 3 pairs of small shoes. Mira's mouth dropped open, Her heart seemed to stop. She knew the children were there. She turned to Michael, eyes glowing. "It's them. They're there." Michael nodded. Mira clenched her fists. Her feet wanted to run forward, but she held herself back. Just one more moment. Just let that door open all the way. The gray truck finally came to a stop in the middle of the sparse forest, where the streetlights no longer reached. The dirt road was desolate, muddy after an early rain, surrounded only by the sound of insects and rustling wind through the treetops. Michael and Mira parked their car across the front of the truck, both of their hearts pounding in their chests. They couldn't wait another second. There was no time for legal procedures, no room for bureaucratic barriers. Their children were in that truck. "Do you see anything?" Mira asked, eyes fixed on the windshield. Michael squinted. "There's movement at the side door. Someone's coming out." The sliding door slowly opened. Light from their headlights shone directly onto the truck's side. A woman stepped out first. It was Ruth, or rather, Sister Grace. She raised her hand to shield her eyes from the glare, her voice sharp. "You're not allowed to be here." "Shut up," Mira snapped, no longer able to stay calm. "Where are my children?" Grace took a step back. "They're no longer your children. They are children of the light." Just behind her, 3 small figures stepped down from the truck. The 3 children wore gray wool sweaters, faded trousers, their faces stern as if programmed not to show emotion. They stood in a line. None stepped forward. Mira nearly collapsed. "Leo," she whispered. "Max, Ryder." No reaction. She stepped slowly forward, each step heavy as stone. "It's me, your mother. Do you remember? I'm Mira, your mother." The boy in the middle, likely Leo, looked at her, his eyes indifferent. "My name is Caleb," he said softly, voice robotic. "Who are you?" Mira froze, a slash to the heart. "No," she shook her head. "No, you're Leo. You used to have a cat named Rocket, remember? You were so afraid of the dark I had to stick glow-in-the-dark stars on your ceiling." The boy blinked, a flicker of uncertainty, but then his gaze turned blank again. "I don't know what you're talking about." One of the other 2, Max, turned away and whispered something to Ruth. Ruth placed a hand on his shoulder, signaling him to stay quiet. Michael stepped forward, his voice firm. "We are the biological parents of these 3 children. They were abducted, and we're here to bring them home." Ruth let out a slight mocking laugh. "They're no longer the children you remember. They have been saved, reborn, and they don't need you." Mira screamed, ignoring Ruth. She pulled something small from her pocket, a worn plastic keychain shaped like a spaceship, faded but still silver blue. "Do you remember this, Leo?" she said, holding it high. "I gave this to you on your 5th birthday. You refused to sleep without it." Leo squinted. His gaze wavered. His lips parted. "I used to have that. Yes, you used to hide it under your pillow. Every time you had a nightmare, you clutched it and ran to our room. Do you remember?" Leo lowered his head. His hand trembled. Ryder, the one on the right, looked at his brother, then at Mira. His lips tightened, but his eyes welled with tears. "Mom?" That word cut through the fog of brainwashing like a blade. "Yes, it's me!" Mira ran forward, nearly collapsing in front of the 3 boys. "It's me! I'm your mother!" Max took a step back, startled. Ruth stepped forward to block her. "Stay back. Kids, get back in the truck." "Move!" Michael shouted. He circled around, helping Mira to her feet. Suddenly, Leo shouted, "No, don't touch her!" Both Ruth and Michael froze. Leo stepped forward, slowly, eyes shimmering. He reached for the keychain in Mira's hand, then burst into tears. "Mom, I remember. I remember everything." Ryder broke into sobs, ran to wrap his arms around Leo and Mira. Max, after a few seconds of inner conflict, also rushed forward, burying his face in his mother's shoulder. Michael ran to them, dropped to his knees, and wrapped his arms around all four of them. He placed a hand on each child's head, whispering over and over, "You're back. You're back." Footsteps pounded toward them. FBI. Headlights flooded the area, sirens pierced the night. An armed agent stepped forward and shouted, "Everyone stay where you are. This is the FBI." Another agent headed straight for the truck, signaling the driver, the man who had gotten out earlier, to raise his hands. Ruth was also restrained, hands cuffed behind her back. Mira still held her children, her hands trembling uncontrollably. She didn't dare look away, afraid it would all disappear if she blinked. A gentle agent approached, kneeling beside her. "Are you Mira Dawson?" She nodded. "These three boys are Leo, Max, and Ryder Dawson?" She clutched her children tightly. "Yes, they're my sons." The agent nodded. "We'll need medical and biometric verification, but from this moment on, they will be taken to safety." Michael stood, choked with emotion. "We'll go with them. We're not letting go, not ever again." Behind them, Ruth was led away, her face blank. Ezra was not present, likely transferred via another route, but everything was now unraveling. The three boys continued crying. Max whispered, We thought you died in the fire." Ryder nodded. "Father Ezra said no one was looking for us." Mira shook her head again and again, holding them close to her chest. "No, listen to me. Father Ezra lied. Your dad and I never gave up. Every day, every night, I prayed. I said your names, even when no one believed I did." Leo looked up, eyes soaked. "I remember my name, but they made me call myself Caleb." "It's okay, Leo. You're yourself again now." An ambulance arrived. The boys were wrapped in thermal blankets, given preliminary checkups on the spot. A female agent handed Mira a box of tissues, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. "You've done something very few ever could." Mira didn't answer. She looked at her children, every smear of dirt on their cheeks, every messy strand of hair, every panting breath. And she thought, "They're alive. That's enough. That's enough to start over." Michael took her hand. They looked at each other, exhausted, drained, but their eyes full of one thing only. No pain would ever separate them from their children again. Above them, the clouds began to part. The first moonlight shone down on the muddy forest road, where everything had ended and where everything would begin again. The helicopter lifted off from the forest edge just as dawn broke, carrying Mira, Michael, and the three children back to the world they had been torn from 5 years ago. Inside the FBI's special medical cabin, Max had fallen asleep on his mother's shoulder. Ryder still clutched his father's hand tightly, and Leo sat in silence, eyes fixed on the pale orange sky beyond. No one spoke. But in that silence, Mira knew everything had changed, forever. News exploded across national media in less than 24 hours. 3 missing triplets rescued after 5 years. Religious community revealed as front for human trafficking ring. Hundreds of headlines, podcasts, and TV segments dug deep into the story. People called Mira and Michael, the parents who refused to be silent. A final beam of light in the darkness. The Brothers of Light community quickly collapsed. Dozens of FBI agents, in coordination with federal police, raided the entire forest compound in Enderfield and uncovered an encrypted archive containing a list of over 70 children whose names and identities had been changed. Most had been lured in from struggling families or had gone mysteriously missing years before. Ezra, the man once called Father, had none of his former authority when handcuffed. He bowed his head as he was led past the press barricade, hair disheveled, muttering deranged prayers about light and salvation. Ruth, also known as Grace, tried to appear calm, but her eyes were vacant. Both were indicted on federal charges: child abduction, identity fraud, conspiracy to launder money, and using religion to commit criminal acts. Sheriff Holt was investigated soon after. In a special hearing, he admitted to having blindly trusted Ezra and receiving numerous support donations from the sect. He was dismissed, stripped of his authority, and faced criminal charges for obstructing a federal investigation. Life afterward wasn't a fairy tale. The three children, now 11 years old, lived in two conflicting realities: the memory of a birth family they once had, and the imposed truth of 5 years that their parents had died, that Ezra had saved them. Leo, once the most spirited, now often stayed silent, speaking only when necessary. Ryder became wary of strangers, and Max frequently woke up startled at night, calling out in dreams the old names the cult had given them: Caleb, Eden, Ruthie. Mira and Michael brought the boys to regular therapy sessions. They rented a small, secluded house near the woods on the outskirts to avoid the media and public scrutiny. Gone were the nights of driving endlessly in search of their children. But these were not normal days either. Parenthood, now, required utmost patience and sensitivity to every subtle shift in their children's mental state. "Sometimes I feel like all we have left are 3 names that match our sons," Mira once said during a quiet night, gazing at an old photo of the boys as toddlers. "But even if they're not the same as before, they're still our children." Michael squeezed her hand. "They'll find themselves again, just like we found them." A year later, their family agreed to a single interview with a seasoned journalist, not to dramatize, not to sensationalize, but to issue a warning. The conversation focused on the gaps in the missing child system, on how an isolated community could operate outside the law for years, and on how desperation makes parents cling to even the faintest thread of hope. After the interview, Mira received thousands of letters from people who had lost children, from empathetic parents, and even from former members of Brothers of Light offering apologies and gratitude. A small nonprofit was founded by Mira and Michael called No Child Disappears in Silence. They didn't want fame. They just wanted to use their voice so that stories like theirs would not be forgotten. One spring day, with lilacs blooming along the white fence surrounding their home, Ryder cut his long hair, once required by the cult, with his own hands. He smiled and handed the bundle to his mother. "I'm not Ruthie anymore." Leo began relearning the piano, the first notes awkward, like memories slowly coming back to life. Max, the shyest of the 3, started talking more, sometimes asking about Grandpa, the old bicycle, or the cheesecake their mother used to make. The fragments were slowly coming back together, slow but persistent. On the boy's 12th birthday, Mira organized a small picnic at the old park in the town they once lived in. No crowds, no cameras, just family, a few close friends, and a simple birthday cake with 3 candles. As Mira lit each candle, she looked at her 3 sons playing beneath the trees, laughing freely, even if only for a brief moment. Michael stepped beside her, holding her hand. "They were the triplets who vanished," Mira whispered, "but now they're back, bit by bit." "And this time," Michael said, "they won't disappear again." The book recounting their journey, published the following year, was simply titled, "A Mother Always Knows." Not for fame, but to remind the world no child should ever disappear in silence.